Hello, hello. Welcome to the Slick Chick Show with Lucy and myself, Tahira. We're
Hello.
so happy to have you here.
I'm so excited to
Yeah,
start this today.
Me too. Yay. So Lucy.
So, Slick Chick Show.
Yeah.
We dabbled with that name for a little while, and then, of course, I did my research because that's
It's
just who I
Lucy.
am. And I wanted to know really what that meant. And so, slick is actually means operating in an impressively smooth, efficient, and apparently effortless way. And then chick is actually an informal, sometimes offensive way of saying girl or woman.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, and likely for you, and you can chime in, it's the balance of both. And I think as women, we are not necessarily offensive, but we can certainly be informal. And we do operate oftentimes in our day-to-day tasks and our massive amounts of things we have going on in our lives in an effortless way. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's just with all our imperfections, we're just perfect. And it's time to accept that and acknowledge that. So for me, it's just, we have the Slick Chick magazine as well. And so when we were doing the name for that, it's quite apt for me is because it's just real and raw. Like I'm slick with all my little shitty spaces that I go into and what I don't do great too, right? Like I'm doing it to the best of what I can do.
Right.
And your best is going to be different, you know?
Right.
And for me, it's really just with the magazine, the idea behind the magazine is, and you and I have talked about this, was it's really about celebrating the everyday woman in her, with the good, bad, ugly, and just sharing those real stories that are raw and authentic and allow you to celebrate your adversities. You know, like most often, when I started the magazine, I was in a phase of I'd just become a new mom and, you know, this pressure that I didn't know existed about being the perfect mother or losing the baby weight or breastfeeding. And, you know, none of that was happening for me. And the sad part was people were looking at celebrities for that. And whilst I was struggling personally, but I was meeting these phenomenal women in my everyday life with like amazing stories.
Right.
That I thought just needed to be shared. And I just thought that and I was getting inspired through that, and all of that other noise just didn't start
Right.
meaning anything to me, right? So from that aspect, it's just like almost like screw you world, this is who we are, we're imperfect, there's flaws, and according to who?
Right. And so let's talk about them. Let's embrace them. Let's empower one another with them.
Right.
Instead of hiding behind a persona that we think is being accepted more fully.
Right.
So maybe that's why we're here. We're here to engage in non-judgmental dialogue based on our own experiences, based on our own thoughts, things we're reading, things that matter to us.
Right.
And that's the premise of our show, I would say.
Yeah. And too, with the show, I really been sort of figuring out how do we get online on a video and have these conversations. And for me, it's really about having the conversations that we don't want to have, like kitchen table conversations, what you sit around with your friends, you know, when you're binge eating on chips and stuff, and the real stuff you talk about, the struggles that you're having, and just being non-judgmental and not a preachy show, right? Like we talked about that.
Right.
And I think the last thing we wanted to come across was being preachy, but this is just Lucy and I have a fantastic working relationship. We've got a great friendship out of that as well. And we often end up having these really amazing conversations, and I was like,
let's bring them to you.
Yeah, more people need to be part of these conversations. So that's really what it is. It's a non-judgmental, non-preachy space for dialogue, just dialogue. You know, sometimes you want to engage in it, and sometimes you're just going to listen to it and be like, yeah, no, okay.
Right.
Or leave a comment or whatever.
Exactly.
So that's really what it is.
Yes, and it's an opportunity to just be who we are.
Yeah.
And not alone in our chatter, but now we're just kind of sharing the chatter.
Yeah.
And hopefully that I'm not the only one thinking of the things that we all are.
Yeah.
So
I don't think you are. I think everybody struggles. And then again, I really want to hit home on it's the everyday woman.
Right.
Like, you know, we met walking in our life paths. in your everyday, doing
Right.
our stuff that we do, our businesses and
Right.
all of that. And it's just real everyday conversation, right? Like with the everyday woman.
Agreed.
And that's something I really want to hit home about. That's really what this is about.
Agreed.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So today's the first inaugural episode is I wanted to talk about a concept that I've been talking to Lucy about, and it's about showing up. And for the longest time, my conditioning was and I think like a lot of things that I've been conditioned to learn, but the conditioning was very much sort of like at odds with each other. So it was show up for your family, be there, do that, be that one person, the friend that everybody can rely on, the daughter, the wife, the mother, and then there's all that stuff about, well, be there for yourself too and show up for yourself. And then when you actually do that, everybody's like, oh, you're so selfish, you're so self-centered, you're so self-indulgent kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And then recently, while I was working on a challenge that I did in the last month, when I started it off, I was like, yeah, I want to do this for me too. But every day was a struggle showing up because it was just such a everyday women. We have phone messages.
Yes, we do. It happens.
But it was the first 2 days was like, okay, I got to show up because my clients are waiting for me, and everybody's counting on me. And it was about the third or fourth day I realized. She's a busy woman, but anyway.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I realized that the truth was I was showing up for me.
And so what does that look like? What does that look like to show up? We kind of throw that word around. Show up, you have to show up, you have to, but do we really know how that's defined for ourselves?
So for me, I don't like to define it for everybody else. For me, showing up really is for me committing to what I've set out to do and getting up and being there despite the situation, external circumstances, my mental state. And I often ask myself, who am I here for in any situation? And it may come across selfish if I tell you I'm here right now on this platform for me. And somebody listening or you listening might even say, well, that's a little pompous and you're just all about you. But no, the truth is I want to do this because I feel these are conversations and dialogues that need to be had. And maybe along the line it's helping me grow as a human being, but it's also hopefully helping somebody out there step out of whatever zone there or realize, like you said, you're not alone when you're thinking these things.
Right.
So for me, showing up is me being able to get there and be present with the intention of what I've set out to do this for.
Right.
And it's really despite all the noise and the chatter and the adversities that I'm facing, because let's be honest, life isn't without its downs.
No, of course not.
But it's what do you do with that, right?
Right.
And how do you show up when times are really shitty?
Right. And I think it's important to show up for yourself because it allows you to be a better version of who you are when you do need to show up for someone else. When you do need, when there's a necessity to fulfill an obligation.
Right.
Or someone needs you, that if you're, the cliche, if your cup is full, then you are more present and you are more authentic.
Right.
To be the person that is needed in any other scenario. Yeah. But without doing that, there is a sense of depletion. There's a sense of resentment that happens,
right,
because you haven't been there for yourself.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's where the importance of showing up.
Absolutely. And I think
really
you touch on something so important, resentment, that word. In the past, I've shown up in relationships, extended in the family friendships, where I've shown up in my mind is for the other person or the sake of the other person. And then I've had resentment towards that relationship, not necessarily the person.
Right.
But towards the relationship, because I felt, I'm always here because they want me or they need me. And then I've been resentful.
Right.
And the truth is, even in those moments when I'm able to look back, nobody asked me.
Right.
So in a sense, I was really not, I had that perception.
Right.
And I find as I get older and I'm maturing and I'm growing, I find value when I'm showing up, when I'm 100% invested in wanting to be there.
Right.
Right? I mean, there's stuff we all have to do obligately
yes.
and show up, and those family dinners that you don't want to be a part
Yes.
of. But if I go with the mindset that I'm doing this
Right.
for me,
Right.
like this is something that's important to me,
Right.
it's a game changer.
Yes, it is.
And I find with everything I do now, I have to ask myself, who am I showing up for?
Right.
And I realize if the answer is not me, then I have to question my intention of why I'm going there, or
Right.
why I'm going to whatever zone that is.
Hmm.
So what does it look like for you showing up?
I think, if you're the type of person that doesn't often say no, that the resentment happens after.
Right.
Like I'd go and I am wholeheartedly caring for somebody, or covering my duties,
Right.
but then it's later that the resentment happens, and I realize it's because I've not replenished
Wow.
or fulfilled my own needs. So then when I'm conscious of it, I take a step back and say, okay, I can help this person, but I need to do this for me. And this can be anything. It can be having a conversation with somebody who's going to replenish my spirit. It can be doing some meditation, reading a
Right.
book, just taking some time to say, okay, I've taken care of myself, and now I can fulfill
Right.
my duties or obligations, or the needs of other people around me. That's sort of what showing up looks like for me, because I know that I can't always just show up for me. Sometimes there are things that I need to do in my life where it's more for the other person, and I'm fine with that, so long as I've done something to show up for myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting it is, right? Like, and I think that's so important that you say it, because it is really, when we talk about things like this, it really is so personal. But we don't ever stop for other people to we don't stop and define what it means to us until we're asked.
Right.
And I think that's something I want everybody to remember when it comes to the big things. Like these are our opinions. These are our takes on it, but yours could be completely different when I ask you, what does it mean to show up? But being clear on it makes it so much easier, and you stop having that inner resistance then.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. Exactly.
And
I think it's just such an important conversation to have with yourself.
right.
And if there's a need, to share it amongst the people who rely on you.
Right.
To say, I'm happy to be there for you, but these are things I need to do to show up for myself.
Right.
And that's an ongoing conversation.
Yeah. And I think too, you also raised self-care and replenishing your cup. That could be a whole other episode,
Yes.
right? About what that is. But it is part of the showing up process for yourself, because you've got to nurture yourself, I believe.
Right. Agreed.
And so that's our episode 1 about showing up.
Thanks for tuning in and watching us today. We are happy to share some gratitude to some sponsors. So let's say thank you to The Authentic Factor, to the Croc Company, and to Glam Jewels for beautifying our wardrobes.
Yes.
And so thanks for showing up. Join us next week for another episode.
Yeah, and we'll have links. Please share and subscribe to the videos. But we'll have links to all our sponsors in the comment section. So be sure to check them out. I love my lip tint from Kra, and of course my beautiful earrings are gorgeous.
Yes.
So please check them out, and we'll see you next week for another raging episode.
Thank you.
Love and light.
Love and light.